Hello and welcome to another Oolong build. Now, I've been testing this build for a while now and it's definitely not as good as I thought it would be, mainly because HP damage builds are just nowhere as good as spirit damage builds are. Now, I farmed for this grace set mainly to run a poison fire DOT build, especially with the extra negative effects duration on the enemies, just so the damage over time effect lasts longer. But outside of a few human enemies, the DOT is just pretty disappointing because of how little damage it does. And something else that I found out is that you cannot lifesteal off of the damage over time effect, so I decided to ditch that build and go with something else instead. But if you do want to run that build for fun, I'll put it at the end of the video. So let's take a look at the complete grace bonuses. So the first one we have is a Spirit Vulnerability on enemy upon a successful martial arts hit, then Power Drop on Wizardry spell hit, then Damage Amplification on Fatal Strike, and then the last two are the most important one for this build. That would be the Negative Effect Duration on enemies increased by 5.8%, and then Principle of Lingbao, which increases the HP damage dealt against enemies when they have a negative effect applied on them. It goes all the way to 30%, and the maximum amount of stack you can have, or it counts towards, is going to be 3. Therefore, to get the maximum HP damage dealt from this grace, the enemies need to be affected by at least 3 negative effects. Now, there are a few ways to do that. You can do it by using special effects that apply debuff on an enemy when you hit them with martial arts, wizardry spells, status elements, or by deflecting. But the way I decided to do it, which I think might be the easiest one, is by having 2 debuffs on my wizardry spell hit. So if you check here, I have Spirit Vulnerability on enemy upon when you hit them with a wizardry spell, and we have Damage Amplification, not this one, Power Drop on enemy upon wizardry spell. So those are the 2 debuffs we can instantly cast, and we're also using which is called the Frost Lance. And I have talked about this in my previous video, is that out of all the different projectile wizardry spells we have, the Frost Lance is my most favorite one because the cast animation is really short, and it's also a projectile type spell. So and you can hit enemies really far away from you as well. It doesn't deplete your spirit gauge by a significant amount. So if you are going for a build where you want to apply debuffs on the enemies by using wizardry spell, then I think Frostlance is definitely the better out of all the other options we currently have available in the game. And I would have gone for 3 different debuffs on the enemies on wizardry spell hit, but with the current gears and the special effects that we have available in the game, you cannot apply more than 2 different debuffs on the enemy with wizardry spell hit. And for the last one, we have damage amplification on enemy upon successfully deflecting a critical blow. Now, the normal deflection doesn't apply, like out of all the special effects we have for deflection, your normal deflection will never be able to apply a debuff on the enemy. The normal deflection, we have special effects that apply a buff on your character, but not any debuffs on the enemies. So it has to be deflecting a critical blow, which is going to give you damage amplification. We also have Fatal Strike, damage amplification upon Fatal Strike, then slow on enemy upon martial arts, and spirit vulnerability on enemy upon successful martial arts hit. But we already have that one for our wizardry spell hit anyway. And the more ways you have to apply debuffs on the enemy, the better the build is going to be, for reasons that should be quite obvious. Now, because you will need to have at least 1 negative effect applied on the enemy, therefore the special effects that you should be going for or stacking on your equipments, well, there are 2 most important ones. The first one is going to be the negative effect duration on enemies increased by 2.9%, and I'm using the special effects on every one of my gears. And the second one is going to be damage to enemies with negative effects increased by 3.2%. Now, you can go with increased spirit damage dealt instead, but for this build, because the grace set mainly focuses on HP damage dealt, so I decided to ditch the spirit damage meta for this one. But if you want, like I said, you can go with increased spirit damage against enemies with active negative effects instead. I'm also going for positive effect duration increased by 2.9% on every single piece of gears. Now, I only have 1 positive effect that I get every time I deflect an attack, which is power gain, but you can also go with something which gives you increased defense, I think that was. But for the accessories, we are focusing on negative effect duration increased on enemies. So if we go to our special effects page, then you can see I'm not going to talk about every single one of them, but the most important one for this build are ones. Damage to enemies with negative effects increased by 15.8%. Now, like I said, this is only the HP damage dealt, not spirit damage. Also, melee damage increased by 2.7%, pretty insignificant. Then positive effect duration increased by 15%. Negative effect duration on enemies increased by 26.7%. That's pretty big. Speed gain from normal attack. You also have speed vulnerability to the target upon successful martial arts hit, slow on enemy on martial arts, power gain upon deflection, power drop on enemy upon wizardry spell, speed vulnerability on wizardry spell as well, and damage amplification to the enemy when landing fatal strike. And we also have set bonus requirement mitigation, and this is okay, successfully deflecting critical blow, you get damage amplification as well, and principle of Lingbao. So for the stats, I have 60 points into wood, and something else is that I talk about it in every single one of my videos, and you might not agree with me, but I always love running a build where you benefit a lot both on the offense and defense by putting or investing a lot of points into the wood virtue, because, well, if you have more points into wood compared to other virtues in the game, then your HP pool is going to be larger. And the more HP you have, the more durability you have. So, and that's the reason I also picked up a weapon that scales also with wood. So this has the second highest scaling with wood. The highest scaling it has is with water virtue, and the last one is going to be fire virtue as a C- scaling. So as you can see, I have only 20 points into fire virtue. Then metal virtue 9, earth, I don't care about that because it's a pretty lightweight armor anyway. And water virtue is 60. Now, speaking of the equipment weight, I could have gotten, like, increased the defense a little bit by putting on some heavier armor, but the problem is that I don't have enough armor pieces that comes with this set bonuses, or should I say grace. So I'm just using whichever one I have currently available without needing to farm anymore for now. Now for the Divine Beast, I'm using Baihu, and that's mainly just for the increase in negative effect duration on enemies. Increases it by 3.6%, but you can also use tanks if you want. Now, speaking of the spells that we're using, Aqua Blink is really nice. Then Frost Lance, like we just talked about, that we're going to be able to apply debuffs on the enemies by using this. And the chill accumulation on enemies, it doesn't matter. That's why I'm not stacking any chill accumulation on my gears, because I really don't care about applying the chill status element. I just only need to apply the 2 debuffs on the enemies whenever I hit them with the Frost Lance. And also, like I talked about, that Frost Lance, it just only, look at this. So it only takes 232 spirit, and I'm not stacking any wizardry spell spirit consumption reduction on my gears. So that's pretty impressive. So yeah, if you're going for those kind of builds, then Frost Lance is definitely going to be the best choice for now. Then we also have Amplify Damage, because, well, we are going for damage build mainly, so Amplify Damage, why not, if you're feeling ballsy, that is. And also the last one, I had no idea what to use now for this build, so I went with the lightning weapon instead, because I have 60 points into wood virtue. So yes, that's gonna be all for this build. Now I know it's not any impressive, but I mainly wanted to make this build for those of you who are farming for this set and wanted to know if it's worth it. I am not quite sure if it's worth it, but if you are looking for a really overpowered build, then this set bonus is definitely not gonna cut it. So you might just start you might just farm for something else instead. Now I do have some really cool build videos that I will be posting in the next few days. So yeah, I'm gonna look out for that. And there are like these kind of some graces that I really don't see the point in using, because they are just pretty underwhelming. But I will be making a few videos like this where you can get an idea about whether it's your build that's terrible, or the set bonus that you are using for your build is just so bad that you cannot actually make it that good. So yeah, that's gonna be all. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one, and take care until then, and I'm out. Peace.